Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today for today's webinar on how to maximise your SATAC preferences. My name's Nicole, I work here in the Prospective Students Office at Flinders University. I'll be conducting today's webinar, so I will be chatting to you for the next 20 minutes or so, depending on how we go. And because there is quite a small group of us tuning in today, if you have any questions at any stage throughout the presentation, I really invite you to type them into the chat box that's located on your screen, and I can answer them for you live as we go along if you like. So something to keep in mind that the SATAC application and the information I'll be providing you today is largely for domestic students. If you are an international student, then it may be similar for you, but worth getting in touch with the international office here at Flinders if you did want any specific questions and advice on your SATAC application. Okay, so to kick things off, I will be speaking as though you have perhaps started your SATAC application. If you haven't started your SATAC application, that's not a problem at all. The screens that you'll be seeing, you'll see as soon as you have. So if you do want to come to university, you will need to submit a SATAC application, and you can do that through satac.edu.au. To avoid a late fee, you'll need to do that before Friday the 29th of September. So you still have a couple of weeks. All you need to do is submit your application and pay that fee, and you can change your preferences around right up until the 3rd of January next year. So it is just a matter of submitting your application to start off with so you can avoid a late fee. You will need to, however, submit an application before the 4th of December if you did want to have equal consideration. What I mean by that is if you submit an application after that date, it might be that you are applying for a degree and you may not receive an offer even though you may have a higher entry score than someone else who got in before the closing date. So just some things to keep in mind. We also have some key dates available for you. Feel free to take a screenshot of this if that's something you'd like to do. All of this information is available on the Flinders website, but also the SATAC website as well. So the main one that will be really relevant for this presentation, as I mentioned, is the fact that you can change your preferences around up until the 3rd of January. Okay, so in this presentation I will be talking about how to back up your options and how to maximise your SATAC application so that you can reach your goals of getting into your dream degree. Okay, to give you a bit of a background information, how results are used for uni entry. You may have seen that on the website and also in our course brochures, we do tend to have two entry scores available for you to look at. We have the competitive entry score, and then we also have a guaranteed entry score. So with the competitive entry score, this one can fluctuate. So what I mean by that is that you may have seen that the competitive entry score is quite often lower than the guaranteed entry score. Not always, just to confuse you a little bit, but more often than not, it is lower than the guaranteed entry score. So the way this competitive entry score, so for Bachelor of Education, Secondary and Bachelor of Health Sciences, this year we've rounded it down to 70, but what this meant was that if there was, say, 100 positions in this degree, they would, the admissions team here would rank everyone that's applied for that degree with someone from the highest ATAR, and then it goes all the way down to their lowest ATAR. Then they'd count down to 100, and then look at what that person scored. So the last person that got into the Bachelor of Education Secondary with the Bachelor of Health Sciences this year had an ATAR of 70.25. So that means that next year that can fluctuate a little bit. Fortunately, it doesn't tend to fluctuate too much, but we do recommend that you do aim for a bit over the competitive entry score, just to make yourself even that bit more competitive. However, the guaranteed entry score, if you achieve an ATAR over the guaranteed entry score, then you are guaranteed a position into that degree if you've listed it as your first preference once the main offer round comes out. So they cannot take that away from you. You do need to list it as your first preference. If you haven't listed it as your first preference and you're made an offer into another degree that was higher, then you can't expect that you can just walk into the one that you should have guaranteed entry for. You do still need to be made an offer into that degree, and you can do so by rearranging your preferences and making that your first preference, so that in later offer rounds you can be made an offer into that. Keeping in mind as well, if you have any questions about any of this throughout the course of the webinar, please type anything you like into the search box there. So to give you an idea of how ATARs do fluctuate a little bit, this gives you an overview of the past few years. So you can see that there's not too much variation between them. Sometimes there is a little bit of a jump. The education one has had a bit of a jump since 2013, but generally speaking they are quite small and minimal, and the university will generally round them down for you as well, so it tends to be a flat number unless it's some of those really competitive degrees where every point counts. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of how the competitive entry score can fluctuate a little bit from year to year. Okay, moving right along, we do have our SATAC website. So I'm hoping most of you have seen this page, and I'm hoping most of you have seen the next few slides that I will show you. So the next one you want to be clicking on is undergraduate. Undergraduate means that you have not studied at university level before, so you're completing your first degree. So you want to click on undergraduate, which will then take you to this page, and then for some reason you need to click my application once again, where it will take you through to, this page. Okay, so on this page, if you have already started an application, which I'm hoping, as I've mentioned, you have, if not, you'll be looking at the right hand side there, but if you've already started an application, you should have been sent or should have created a username and password. So this is where you log into your SATAC application and you can pick up where you left off. Once you've filled in your details, you'll then be shown this screen. So what we'll be talking about today is changing your preferences and backing up your options. So if you decided when SATAC applications opened that you were really interested in, say, engineering, you get a few months down the track and decide that engineering isn't for you. The only reason you were choosing that was perhaps because your best friend was doing it. So now you've realised that you actually don't want to do engineering and you would like to do something you'd like to study. There's nothing wrong with that. You can change your preferences around as many times as you want. There's a lot of myths that you can only change it a couple of times or 2 or 3 times. That's absolutely not true. You can change your preferences around as many times as you want, right up until the 3rd of January. So to change your preferences, you can either click on the left-hand side there or in the link in the centre that will give you the option to change preferences. Once you've clicked onto this, you'll come up with your preference page. This should look familiar to you if you have submitted an application in the first point, because this is where you would have chosen the degrees you want. So this is where it can get a little bit confusing. Okay, so if you do want to search for a new degree, you'd be looking for it in here. Okay, this is where you search for a new degree. However, you'll see up on the screen that there's actually 6 preferences listed in that box already. So what we'll need to do is actually kind of start again. So up here, you've got your 6 preferences. You can, if you have chosen the degrees you want and you're happy with those 6 preferences, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can leave them as is, or if you want, you can reorder them. What I mean by reorder them is that if you suddenly decide that this person has currently listed the Bachelor of Laws as their first preference, but just say they actually want to list Bachelor of Nursing, which they've currently got as their 5th preference, as their number 1. All you would simply do is delete the numbers in the columns, list your Bachelor of Nursing as your first preference, and your Bachelor of Laws as your wherever you want underneath that. But then you do need to click reorder, and then you do need to click save. Okay, a lot of people do get confused. You do absolutely need to press reorder, save, and then you click next. Some people skip that little save button step, so then of course it doesn't save and they get quite frustrated by that. Okay, however, if you want to add a new preference in, you will need to delete one of your preferences before you can. So you won't be able to add another preference in. You can have a maximum of 6 preferences. So you delete your preferences by clicking the delete tick box over on the right hand side of that page, and then you want to hit reorder and save and next. That way you'd be down to say 5 if you've only deleted 1, and then you can look up the course code again and add that preference in just as you did with it, when you first did your SATAC application. The reason I'm showing you this is because this is how you can back up your options and save your preferences. So hopefully some of you have an idea of some of the pathways into the degree you want. Some of the really competitive degrees, so some of your things like Flinders, like your allied healths and your law and medicine, that always list them as your first preference, but ultimately there are so many backup options and pathway options into what you want as well. So this is why I always mention that you should back up. Why back up? Because you can always move around the university into different degrees based on your GPA, okay? So what we suggest you do as your first preference, always list what you want most. Even if you don't think you'll get the ATAR score or the STAT score to get into it straight away. Because as I showed you before, competitive entry scores can fluctuate, so you never know what will happen. Bonus points can also come into consideration. That might boost your ATAR up if you are in Year 12. Flinders Uni Test can boost your ATAR up. There's lots of things that may happen. So always list what you want as your number one preference. Then look into your backup options. This is where we come into play. So myself and my team, we definitely do not expect you to know every single backup option made available to you. That's for us to know. That's why we're here to help you out. It's great if you do know them, but it's always worth checking with perhaps myself or one of my teammates to make sure that you've got the best possible pathways into it. The way it will work is if you start in another degree, which I'll give you some examples of in a little bit, but just say you started, you wanted to get into engineering, mechanical engineering honours, but you didn't receive the score to get into it straight away. What we would do is we would suggest you start in your Bachelor of Engineering Science. That way, you work really hard for a year, you get a good grade point average. So your grade point average is your collective score of all of your university topics. So all of your assignments, your essays, your exams, everything, it's put into a GPA once you've completed 4 topics at university. Your GPA, the maximum GPA you can receive is a score of 7. Anything, so 7 means you're kind of averaging on high distinctions. A 6 means you're averaging on, say, distinctions, and 5's looking like you're sort of averaging on credits. So at university, you really want to be shooting for a GPA around 5 because that will provide you the most flexibility to move within other degrees at the university. So you can see here, if you achieve a GPA of 5, you have guaranteed entry to transfer into 145 other degrees at Flinders. Okay, so that's where you'd have guaranteed entry. However, just say you received a GPA of 4.5 and the course you wanted didn't fall into the 78 of the guaranteed courses there. That's okay, you would still be competitive for a spot within the degree that requires a higher GPA. You're just not guaranteed a position. So the way you transfer around in between university is based on your GPA. There are some pathways displayed on our website. This is on the link just on the second dot point there that can guide you a little bit. But as I mentioned, the best way is probably to give us a call and we can personalise it to you. And for more information on the courses and the guaranteed entry with Flinders link and transferring, you can just go to study.flinders.edu.au/Flinders link, and it provides you a list of all of the courses that you'd have guaranteed entry into based on your GPA. Okay, so what I've got here is an example for physiotherapy. I've probably chosen the most complicated one to put into this webinar, but I thought it provided you perhaps the best idea of how many options you have if you want to get into a degree that is more competitive. So please don't get too overwhelmed by this one. They're not all this complicated, and hopefully I've tried to make it so that it is quite easy for you to understand. But basically, this is your pathway into physiotherapy, or all of your options available into physiotherapy. So under the Year 12 side of things, things that you can do to boost your entry ATAR is the uni test through your school. You need to look at your prerequisites, and if you've met them through your Year 12 topics, which this one to get into physiotherapy has no prerequisite topics, but it does have some assumed knowledge. Not the end of the world if you haven't done it, but it is really handy if you have in Year 12. This person would then list their SATAC application as follows. So they obviously want to get into physiotherapy, so they're going to list that as their number one. So you've got your Bachelor of Health Science, Master of Physiotherapy as your number one preference. As a number 2 and 3, these can be interchangeable. So this depends on what the person wants most. So the Bachelor of Health Science and the Bachelor of Exercise Science are both great pathways into the Master of Physiotherapy. It really depends on what this person would perhaps prefer to study and prefer to maybe graduate in if they never get into the double degree or Masters of Physiotherapy. Both of them have quite a few streams to choose from. If they did choose the Bachelor of Health Sciences, they'd be looking at completing the major in therapy studies, and Bachelor of Exercise Science, they'd be looking at completing the Allied Health specialisation. So this person's got an interchangeable second and third preference. However, as a backup to that, because those two have slightly lower ATAR or quite a bit lower ATARs than their number one preference, but as a backup to those 2 degrees, this person's actually really clever and listed the Bachelor of Disability and Developmental Education Health Science Pathway degree. So that's a backup to their backup option. So if they do not achieve the ATAR they need to get into the first one, then the admissions team will then look at their second preference. If they're still not competitive enough to get into their second preference, they'll look down into their third preference. And then if they're still not competitive to get into their third preference, they'll look into the Bachelor of Disability and Developmental Education. Whatever you are most eligible for, you will be made an offer to. Okay? So the Bachelor of Disability and Developmental Education is great if they've achieved an ATAR over 60 and they'd have guaranteed entry into it over 70. So based on whatever ATAR this person gets, you can see that they've got a huge range of options available for them. Okay, so this one can be a little bit hard to understand, but just say they chose the exercise science and specialised in allied health. They worked really hard in that first year and they got a GPA over 5.5, so they did pretty well. Then they'd actually be competitive to apply to transfer into the Bachelor of Health Sciences Master of Physiotherapy. And because they would have covered some topics that you would do in the Bachelor of Health Science Master of Physiotherapy in that first year of study, that actually wouldn't need to repeat them, so you would get some credit for that study. However, if this person didn't do so well in their school results and maybe achieved an ATAR of 65, then it's likely they'd receive an offer into the Bachelor of Disability and Developmental Education, and then they'd work hard to obtain a GPA above 5, and that would provide them guaranteed entry into health science. But they'd also be competitive for exercise science, and I mean they can also apply for the Bachelor of Health Science Master of Physiotherapy again, because we always recommend you put what you want most as your number one preference. Okay, so at Flinders we do also have quite a few pathway options available for you. So these can be a little bit tricky to find sometimes. So as I mentioned, that's what we're here to help you with. But these are some pathway courses specifically designed to get you into perhaps higher, more competitive degrees. So as I mentioned, the health sciences pathway is called the Bachelor of Disability and Developmental Education. You do that for 1 year, you achieve a GPA of 5, and then you can apply, if you achieve a GPA of 5, you'd have guaranteed entry into second year of your health sciences. So quite a few of these pathway degrees work in a really similar fashion, and it's really likely that you would receive full credit or really close to full credit if you graduate the first year with a GPA above 5. They do vary a little bit, so it's worth looking on the website. But yeah, there's lots of pathways available, and there's more than this as well, so make sure you do get in touch. Okay, now I've just got a question that's come through to me privately, so let me just have a quick read of this one and see if it's relevant to everyone. If not, I might answer it at the end. Okay, so that one it does have an international base to it as well, so I might leave that question just to the end for that person. It is in regards to physiotherapy and the GPA if you did want to stick around after, but just because it is quite a specific question, I'll leave that one to the end. Okay, other backup preferences. At Flinders, you may have heard that we do have a few other options as well. In regards to your SATAC application, the only other things you can add in, and perhaps keep down the lower end of this, so perhaps preference number 5 or 6, is you can actually list we do have a Bachelor of General Studies. So this can be a great pathway into a lot of degrees as well, and it works really in a similar way to the pathway degree. So you work hard, you get a good GPA, and then use your GPA to apply to transfer into other degrees. So General Studies has a lot of topics from a lot of different areas that can really benefit you once you do transfer into another degree. So this Bachelor of General Studies is actually designed largely as a pathway into other degrees if you want to use it. You can also start in something like a dual offer. So these also have SATAC codes, but you do start in TAFE. So what a dual offer requires is it doesn't require an ATAR, but you do need at least one basis of admission. So again, it might be worth, if we offer a dual offer in the area of interest that you're looking into, which can be found on the website, it could be worth listing a dual offer as maybe your 5th or 6th preference. So right down the bottom of your preferences. And what this means is you complete a TAFE diploma at TAFE, but then once you complete that diploma, you have guaranteed entry into a degree. So generally speaking, that might be if you start in in a diploma of nursing, you complete that diploma, then you go on and do a further 2 years, I think it's 2 years of study in your bachelor's degree in nursing. So you top up your diploma and make it into a degree. And we have dual offers available in a huge number, in a really broad range of areas at Flinders, so it could be worth looking into. Dual offers are definitely nothing to skim over. There's a lot of advantages to starting in a dual offer. TAFEs obviously are located all over the country, so sometimes you can start off at a TAFE that's closer to you if you are living a fair distance from Flinders, and then come to Flinders and perhaps move a little bit closer for a shorter amount of time to top up your degree. Another advantage is the fact that you would then perhaps, if you were going for say an engineering degree and you've started in a diploma, I think it's called engineering science, at TAFE, you could then complete your diploma of engineering science, go on to complete your honours in engineering, and you've actually then got 2 certificates over someone that may only have a degree. So you would be more competitive potentially in a working place environment. Okay, so yeah, definitely worth considering if you did want to list them further down your preferences as a 5th and 6th preference. Some other things to consider is if you didn't complete a prerequisite subject in Year 12. This is something you do not need to stress over straight away, okay? So often we hear that, if you didn't complete a prerequisite subject in Year 12 that you can't do what you want. It's absolutely not true. Again, you need to get in touch with us because there's always pathways into what you want, and we can tell you how to back up your preferences so that you can cover yourself for your prerequisites. Then, again, use your GPA or potentially even your school results to transfer into the degree you want. Your school results will last for 2 years, your school results will last indefinitely until you've studied for more than 2 years at university. So if you started in, say, a Bachelor of Engineering Science because you haven't covered the prerequisites to get into mechanical engineering, you could do that for a year, cover yourself for your prerequisites, then apply to transfer into your mechanical engineering, and you could still use your ATAR because you wouldn't have studied for more than 2 years at university. Basically, our admissions team will look into what's ever highest, your ATAR or your GPA or your stat results, whatever you've sat, they'll look at whatever's highest to get you into the degree you want. Keeping in mind as well that a lot of our creative arts degrees, they do have additional entry requirements, so things like portfolios or auditions and CVs and things like that. If you haven't completed these or you haven't completed them in time, again, there's pathways into it. So you could start in something like your Bachelor of Media Arts, do some topics that you would be covering if you did apply to transfer into the Specialised Creative Arts degree further down the track, and then receive credit for your learning as well. So there's definitely lots of options there, so worth, again, getting in touch with us. Now, at other universities, you may have heard of bridging programs and programs that you need to apply for on your SATAC application. At Flinders, we are a little bit different. So, if you were interested in the Foundation Studies program, which is a great program to teach you how to become a university student, you do not need to use this as a SATAC preference. Other universities in South Australia, they recommend that you put this as perhaps your 6th preference. We don't make you take up a SATAC preference. This one you apply for through our website. So it's a free program that we offer at Flinders, and you apply for this one through our website. The Foundation Studies program goes for generally about a semester, but we do offer a program that runs at night time for the course of a year. We also offer the Flinders Uni-Elite program, so if you achieve an ATAR between 50 and 60, this program hasn't yet been fully confirmed, but if you are eligible for this, the university will contact you. So just be aware that it's available, but if you do fall into the bracket where you achieve an ATAR between 50 and 60, it's really likely that, again, someone from my team will be contacting you to see if you're interested in the Uni-Elite program. If you wanted more information about this, I'd recommend you jump onto our Pathways webinar, which is coming up in a few weeks' time. Now, just to give you a bit of an idea of how people do go from degree to degree and how you can change your mind, just like you back up your SATAC preferences with the aim of perhaps getting into the degree you want, if the degree is not what you're expecting or not what you wanted, then you can still use your GPA to transfer in and around other degrees as well. So Kirstie, she actually now works in the office with us, but she's just graduated, and this is her story as a student. So she applied for a range of courses during her year 12. She really wanted to get into Psych Honours, which had an ATAR of 94 when she applied for it. And her second preference was a Bachelor of Law in Behavioural Science. She didn't quite get the ATAR to get straight into Psych Honours, so she started in Behavioural Science Psychology at Flinders, and she then decided to add in a Bachelor of Law and Behavioural Science. So she got one semester in and realised that she wanted to add in law, so she did that through using Flinders Link. So she used her GPA to add in the Bachelor of Law with a Behavioural Science, but then decided law wasn't quite right, and so she was able to use her high GPA to apply to transfer into Psychology Honours in her second year of study. So we use Kirstie because she's a real life example, and it just goes to show how much you can change your mind and you can have freedom to move around the university based on your GPA. And it works the same way with backing up your preferences. It's as simple as that. You just need to work hard to get a fairly achievable GPA of around 5 that will provide you with the highest chance and most competitiveness to get into some of those higher, more competitive degrees. Okay, make sure, if you have any questions at all, feel free to chuck them into that chat box. Now, accepting offers and enrolling. Once you have been made an offer, if you have listed your first preference, if you've been made an offer into what you've listed as your first preference, SATAC will assume that that's the one you want, because as we've mentioned, we always recommend you list what you want most as your number one preference. So if you've listed it as your first preference, then you can go easy knowing that you've accepted that offer. However, if you receive an offer to your 2nd to 6th preferences, you will need to accept or reject these offers. The cool thing here though is that you can accept your offer. So just say you're made an offer into health sciences, you want to get into physiotherapy, because you've listed health sciences as your second preference, you can accept this offer but wish to be considered for higher preferences. What I mean by this is you can accept your offer, you can even begin enrolling in your topics, But in later offer rounds, if people perhaps have been offered the physiotherapy degree, double degree, and they don't take up their offer for whatever reason, the university still needs to fill those spots. So they'll continue working their way down the list of the rank and giving out offers until all positions have been accepted. Okay, so you can accept your offer, but still be considered for higher preferences in later offer rounds. If you're really lucky, you may actually receive an offer to your first preference in later offer rounds, in which case all you would do is simply withdraw from the one you've already started enrolling in and enroll in and accept your new offer to your first preference. A lot of our degrees can be deferred as well. So if you wanting to defer, you can do this, and there is instructions on your letter of offer of how to do this. Okay, now, so your checklist, I've got a couple of questions coming through, which is fantastic. All right, so the question is, this is, I might read out just because it's really relevant for a lot of people. I have also received, just someone's checking that I've received their question, and that's because it's an international based question. I will speak to you a little bit later towards the end of this one, sorry, but for another question, I've got, I was wondering if we are offered a place for our first choice, but we decide after applications are closed that we'd like to pursue our second offer. Are we allowed to change that instead? Really great question, and the answer is yes. So what you would do is, if you get offered a place in the degree that you've listed as your first preference, what you would do is you can accept that, or it will accept it automatically, but you can actually log back into your SATAC application after, I think it's about 2 or 3 days after the main offer round, I reckon, and you can reshuffle your preferences around. So then what you would have the option of doing is, if you've been made an offer for your first preference, you might then put your first preference, say, as your third preference. You would then change your response to, I accept this offer, but wish to be considered for a higher preference, and then list the degree you want above the degree you've got a current offer for. That way, the ones that are higher, again, you're back in the draw for the later offer rounds. Does that make sense? So basically, if you receive an offer to a higher preference, you can reshuffle them. It can't be immediately after main offer round, but there is a date, and you can be notified of this as well. But you can absolutely reshuffle them so that you're considered for higher preferences in later offer rounds. So yeah, you've still got an option to be made an offer to quite a few different degrees if you would like to. Okay. So your checklist, as I've mentioned over and over, call us. Please don't hesitate. That's what myself and my team are here to do. We're here to help you out and make this as easy for you as possible. So we can help you order your preference. We actually have access to SATAC application. We can't edit them, but we can see how you've listed things. We're definitely not biased at all, so it's completely fine if you've listed other universities in there. We'll guide you in the best way we can for Flinders. We won't be able to speak for other universities, but please don't be embarrassed at all if you do have other universities listed in your SATAC preference. Check on bonus points. So if you are currently in Year 12, you may be eligible for bonus points, but unfortunately the only way for you to find out how those bonus points may affect your ATAR is if you call us. Or call a university. Okay, so you do need to call us when you receive your ATAR, because it's not as simple. If you know you're eligible for 4 bonus points, unfortunately they don't make it as simple as just adding 4 bonus points onto, say, an ATAR of 65 to make it 69. It can get scaled, and it could actually boost your ATAR up to about 71 or 72. But unfortunately we have to do that for you. You have no way of working that out. If you still are unsure, we haven't got dates just yet, but you can attend a preference information session. So we'll have lots coming out in December, and even I think in the first few days of January, where we can change your preferences around and look at backing them up for you. There will be a whole heap of information available on our website. And of course, as I've continued to say over and over again, please do not hesitate to contact us at all. Keep in touch with our webinars. We have quite a few coming up that may be really relevant to you. And over the next few months, we will have some course-specific webinars coming up as well. So they're not currently on our website yet, But we've got some course-specific ones coming up where lecturers and current students will be speaking about the degrees that they know as well. So myself and my team, we know a little bit about everything at Flinders, whereas the ones speaking on their courses, they know everything about their area. So yeah, feel free to tune into them and register for them. Apart from that, I will get back to this question now, but that pretty much wraps up most of what I have to say on how to maximise your SATAC preference, unless you have any other questions. Thank you so much for joining me. I do really appreciate it, but feel free to head off if you don't have any other questions or you wouldn't like to stick around for this one. But I just have a question here about GPA and physiotherapy, so I just need to read this one quickly. Okay, so this person is interested in the Master of Physiotherapy and has completed physiotherapy overseas. So what you will need to do is get your qualifications assessed to make sure, I understand you're a permanent resident now, which is great. It'll definitely make it a little bit easier for you to apply. But you will need to get your physiotherapy, your overseas qualification assessed from SATAC to make sure that it is the equivalent of an Australian undergraduate degree. Okay, once it's been cleared as an equivalent undergraduate degree, you can then look at your study options and see if you'd be eligible for your Masters of Physiotherapy. If your GPA is the equivalent of what you've mentioned here, you would be competitive, but there are also ways you could potentially look at boosting your GPA. So what I would recommend you do is it's probably best if you give us a call maybe tomorrow. If you are currently calling from Australia, give us a call tomorrow and we can always have a chat to you one-on-one. So what I might do is message you privately so you can have my direct number, because this is quite a specific question, and I'll get in touch with you tomorrow in regards to that physiotherapy question, just because it is quite a technical one. Now, what have I got? I've got another question here. Do I have any other slides similar to the physiotherapy pathways one I showed? I don't on this presentation. I do have a couple more on my computer back in my office, but I don't have any on here, and it is generally for the allied health. So I think I've got one for maybe nutrition and dietetics, but again, I can definitely talk you through those options. So I understand the flowchart's a really great visual. I work that way as well. I tend to find it the easiest that way, but I can definitely explain anything you like in perhaps an email. So what I'll do is, to everyone, I will send you all my email address, and you can email me with exactly what you want to get into and the information you'd like, and I'd be more than happy to let you know what your preferences would be, and depending on what ATAR you receive or what entry score you have. So feel free to email me at any stage, and I can get back to you perhaps tomorrow as well. Feel free to add in your phone number if you want to, and we can go from there. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I will speak to you soon. Hopefully we'll see you on campus as well next year or in the following years. Thanks guys, appreciate it. See ya.